It's Wednesday, November 13th, and today I talk with Bruce Harple from Freewell about Jive FastTrack Migrations and quick and easy way to get from Jive over to Office 365. I hope you enjoy this. Hello, and welcome to the Work Together Better podcast. This morning I've got Bruce Harple here with me. Bruce, how are you doing?
Hey, good morning, Danny. Doing great, man. Glad to be here.
Good. We've got a great subject this morning. We're going to jump into fast tracking Jive migrations. Give me a little bit of background on what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So what we're talking about, Danny, as you know, we've been doing Jive migrations, for the past 4 years, right here, 4 to 5 years, probably. We've done over 20, Jive migration, Jive workshops for big enterprise customers, and and these migrations, they're highly complex migrations. Require a significant investment of both business and IT resources, on the customer side. You're really moving content from one set of containers in Jive to a completely different set of containers in Office 365, and over those 4 years, there's more and more container types, right, that have been configured and presented in Office 365, right? That's Office 365 is a moving target, right? Microsoft's continuing to enhance that. So 4 years ago, we didn't have modern pages and modern sites. Today we do, right? Much richer user experience. So, and our utilities, right, that we've used, to drive these migrations, right, to pull content from Jive, transform it into a form that could be uploaded to Office 365, and then putting it in these containers in Office 365. Those utilities have evolved over the years, right? We continue to enhance those, to meet the needs of both customers and the way they've got content in Jive, but also we're having to change our utilities to handle the changing landscape in Office 365. But the good news is that it's starting to settle down a little bit, and what we're hearing from customers now is they need a faster, more simpler, lower cost way, right, to get their content from Jive into Office 365. Because right now it is a complex process. There's a lot of decision making that has to take place around how you're going to map content from Jive into Office 365. But because we've done it so much, we kind of know the mappings of content that most people choose, 80, 90% of the time. So to try to get to something that's that's faster, that's cheaper, more predictable, we're kind of coming up with this concept of a fast track migration.
Yep. Awesome. So tell me about which customers would be good candidates for this type of migration.
Well, certainly a candidate that's in a time crunch, right? So as you know, many customers that come to us, their Jive license is expiring in 3 months, and they've chosen not to renew that investment. They want to invest in Office 365. And they come to us and ask us to move that content off in a very short period of time, which sometimes we can do and sometimes we can't.
Yeah.
Depending on which content they have. But certainly someone that's time crunched, right, that needs to get content moved quickly and get off of Jive, based on a deadline like that. But other candidates would be, if for a customer, if really getting the content out of Jive and into Office 365 and into an archive, if that's a priority for you, fast track would be the way to go, right? Because and we'll talk about it in a minute, because we're going to go into a fixed set of containers in Office 365, right? We're going to kind of take the decision making out of the equation and kind of come up with some default mappings and where content will be placed. So if the content is the priority, they would be a good candidate. If UX, if the user experience is the top priority, right? So if someone's really trying to replicate that feature-rich Jive user experience, fast track, right? Because there might be more work that needs to be done, in that destination tenant, right, to take advantage of, crafting, a site structure, an architecture, and a user experience that closely, mirrors Jive, right? So that may not be just out of the box, push it into a fixed number of containers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for people too that, if the containers in Office 365, if you're okay with using communication sites, team sites, or even Teams, those are all default destinations that we can easily move content to, right? And yeah, and then the other criteria would be if someone can just keep the site structure simple, right, in Office 365. So if you can keep it flat, which really is the Microsoft way, right? Microsoft is suggesting to keep those site structures flat, not build in these complex hierarchies. So, I think if your focus is migrating content, you can handle the out of the box containers of communication sites, team sites, and teams. You can keep your structure simplified and flat, and UX isn't your key priority, and you're up against a deadline. I think FastTrack is perfect.
So talk to me about what are the phases of a FastTrack migration?
Yeah, so what we're doing is really kind of taking, our full blown, process rich, Jive migration, right, and kind of just paring it down, to what's the minimum critical things that we have to be able to do, right? So, somebody goes through FastTrack migration, they will get a migration environment provisioned in Azure, right, with all the utilities installed, right? So this migration environment is kind of where we pull all the content into, where we transform that content, and then it's where we kind of push that content into Office 365. So you're going to get that environment. That's part of a FastTrack migration, right? We'll take care of all that for you. And then we'll still go through the process of doing a very detailed Jive inventory. So we scan your whole Jive instance. We create a spreadsheet with all kinds of metadata about that content, right? And why that's important is, it's going to be up to the customer to really kind of make decisions around what content does get migrated, what content just gets archived, in a migration database. That's part of that migration environment. So we still want to go through this inventory process. And then there's some education and training that we give the customer on how to rationalize what content does get pushed into Office 365. And we kind of help them with that and help them kind of complete the mapping of content, right? So we still go through that inventory process because it's key in kind of doing the planning, but it's a quick planning cycle, right? And we still do a burn-in test, right? So we still do a test to make sure that in our migration environment that we provision in Azure, right, we still do a test to make sure that we can connect to your Jive instance, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem, and that we can pull some content from that and that we can push it into your Office 365 tenant. So we're really just trying to validate, can we pull content? Do we have all the permissions to get to Jive? Can we then push that content to your tenant into Office 365? Do we have the permissions to do that? So we still want to make sure we can do that. And then we go right into the migration, Danny. I mean, we just, and we have what we're doing, the first, as you know, we do migrations in waves, right? So a wave is just a way to kind of logically break your content up into smaller increments so you can push content, pull it from Jive, push it off of 365 in kind of a controlled way. And then you can kind of manage and monitor that migration and can kind of validate content counts, right? So, we do like a wave one, but it's a production migration. It's, we used to call it kind of a pilot migration, but, now in these FastTrack migrations, it's a real migration. But we're really doing, and validating the end-to-end process. But, the content we move it's in production, right? And then we still do the production migration waves. And with the FastTrack migrations, it's all what we call one pass. So we basically pull the content from Jive, transform it, push it into SharePoint or Office 365, and it's live, right? So we have a process called a Delta migration, which is kind of a second pass, where you can give people, a couple weeks to validate content, and then you kind of then go grab changes that occurred in Jive and push that up. We're not doing that in a FastTrack, right? It's pull, transform, push, pull, transform, push, right? It's all about throughput and making it happen quickly. And then still at the end of the whole process, the customer does get a full archive of all their Jive content, right? Which is good for auditing, for compliance and things like that. So, we follow the same process. We're just eliminating some of the steps. We're compressing some things and trying to get through it, in a much faster way.
What any other? I know you've been talking about some of the limitations or boundaries that are out there. Anything else you'd like to call out?
Yeah, I mean, probably the other things I guess would be, one of the things that we're going to do in these fast track migrations is, as you migrate, a set of content in a wave, and we break waves into batches, right? And typically, in one of our full migrations, there's anywhere from a 5 to 10 day period where we let customers validate that content, right? So in these fast track migrations, it's like 2 days to validate content. So we're moving, right? We're not taking that much time. You can still validate content after 2 days, but we're going to kind of keep going a batch at a time, a batch at a time, a batch at a time, a wave at a time. So it's a fast moving process, right? And these utilities, Dan, I mean, we've been doing it for 4 or 5 years. They're proven. We know they work. So, the areas where remediation is required, that has reduced over the years, right? Because it's getting to be more and more predictable. So, it's that. And then, if you look at all the different types of content in Jive, we're going to kind of put boundaries around what content we bring across in these fast track migrations. So it's not anything and everything that everybody wants. We're going to kind of, yeah. And again, we know the types of content over the years that customers, deemed valuable and that they really want to pull into Office 365. So we're going to put some boundaries around what content we actually not only pull, but push into Office 365. We're going to kind of pull all the content so we have everything, but we might only push certain types of content and the content within a place in Jive up into Office 365. So we kind of put some boundaries around that. Again, it's all about speed. It's all about simplification and kind of trying to reduce cost.
Excellent, excellent. So I know with any project that we go after, it's a shared team. The customers are part of the team. We're working together. What are some of the customer responsibilities that are there that are part of this Jive Fast Track offering?
Yeah, I mean, and most of their responsibility is going to be up front, Danny, kind of before you start the migration process. I mentioned, kind of pulling that Jive inventory, which has a lot of metadata about all the content, things like, the dates the content was last updated, things like that. And, so the customer is really going to own the process of, taking that detailed inventory that we provide them and really making the decisions around what gets migrated and what doesn't, right? And they can do that with that metadata around the content. And we have kind of rationalization rules. When I say rationalization rule, kind of rationalizing what goes, what stays. So we kind of provide insights and guidelines for here's how customers have done this in the past. But ultimately, they got to decide what stays, what goes. They also will need to kind of give us identity mapping. And most of the time that doesn't change. The identity of somebody in Jive is typically the same as their identity in Office 365. Not always, but they've got to give us the mapping, because we want to kind of maintain all those identities, right? Because obviously content has identities tied to it, right? Who created the content, who updated the content, and we want to maintain that. So we got to have that mapping. And then we're going to ask them to kind of, map the content. So we need to know, for this content that's in this Jive place, whether that place is a group, a space, a project, or a blog, they're going to have to tell where does it go, in Office 365. So they're going to have to kind of give us that mapping, right? We help with that, right? We don't just throw the fence and go figure it out, right?
Because they've never done that before. So it's more of like we're coaching them and consulting them on how to make a right decision. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but really, right. Danny, once all that's done, once they give us the mapping, the identity mapping, the content mapping, then we're into execution. And then at that point, they own the validation, but again, it's fast validation. We're not going to spend weeks validating content. We're moving. So, that's really their involvement, which, again, we're trying to pare that down too, just trying to, we still want to make sure that what gets across and what goes to high quality. We want to make sure all the content comes across. So we're still going to validate counts, that we pulled so many content types from Jive, and yes, we pushed those content types into Office 365. But in the spirit of fast and low cost, but still, maintaining quality, still maintaining that all those URL linkages that are in Jive, right, between content. We still do all that. So again, we're just taking all the years of experience we have, right? We've been doing this 4 or 5 years, and really kind of framing this up and crafting it in a way that we know will be successful. We know it's predictable because we've been there, we've done it, and now we're taking all that knowledge that we've gained and making it so that we can move through this quickly, and it can be done for a reasonable price.
That's awesome. I appreciate you guys being adaptable to this as well. And I think, all the conversations that we've been having with customers, and reason why we've been focusing in on the really large, we're working with the large Jive implementations. The biggest ones that are out there. And I think what's happened is we also see that we could help out with some more mid-market type of companies that are just really you're dealing with the iron triangle here of fast, cheap, and quality. So it's sort of like trying to figure out, like, how do we take what we've done with these large migrations and maybe scale it back a little bit for those mid-market customers that sometimes they just don't have the budgets in place to go spend a lot of money on a migration. And we want to be able to help them out. I think that's one of the things that and I would say this is really, the fast track is good for the mid-market. I still think for the really small migrations, we might be able, I usually just try to provide some guidance to them, like help them. Here's what I would do if I was in your position, because I'm a small company as well. But I think this is where this will help out, is for those mid-market companies that want to do the migration, and we are taking some smart things out, that some things that we would be able to sort of price something that they can afford that's part of the migration. Because I also see this as really, we just want them to get over, because where 3will shines is building out, is when they're on Office 365. It's when we're doing Teams, we're into building line of business applications, we're doing the things that where 3will really where our focus is, and this is really just to get them onto the platform. So I appreciate you guys being agile and what you're doing, and just helping these customers get over to Office 365, which is what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Another scenario too, Danny, I didn't mention as you were talking, and made me think about it. The other scenario where this applies, and we're seeing this more and more often, right, is it's when acquisitions and mergers occur. Right. So one of the common themes that we see is, they're taking these integrated companies and getting to a common collaboration platform. And, probably in 99% of the cases, that common collaboration platform is Office 365. So in scenarios like that, where they've got, with mergers and acquisitions, there's timelines and deadlines for integration. There's funding that goes into those mergers and acquisitions, and it's available for a short period of time. So in those scenarios where, man, I got to get, the content from Jive, from this platform, from acquisition A into my common Office 365, collaboration platform, and I got to get it done quickly, Fast Track's going to be perfect for those scenarios. That's great.
Anything else before we wrap up here?
No, I just think, for anybody that wants to learn more, just, Danny, you've got a whole section of our website dedicated to migrations in Jive. So if anybody wants to learn more about the Fast Track migrations, just go to our website. You can reach out to us through that, and we'll be glad to talk to you about it.
And for folks who are doing this, should they still download the sizing tools? Do you still recommend them doing that?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Because that just gives us a sense for how big their Jive instance is as far as the number of content items. So yes, definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, and so anybody coming to the website, just go to the Contact Us page. On the Contact Us page, you can one of the options is saying you're interested in a Jive migration, so just select that, and you'll be followed up very soon probably from me. So thanks, Bruce, again for doing that. Appreciate your time and your agility, and also just listening to customers and what their needs are. So appreciate you doing that. And thanks everybody for listening, and have a great day.
Thanks everybody.